So again, this is kind of a college application roadmap, but specifically geared towards parents. So first, I'm going to do just a general overview of what the college application process and timeline might look like. And then I'm going to talk about specific applications and some specifics that might go with each type. Then I'm going to talk, and those are specific to California applications, sorry. And then I'm going to talk about the Common App, and then we'll have time for questions. So when we think about college applications, I'm not sure, does everybody want to, if they can, send in the chat maybe what grade their student is in? Just so I have a general idea of maybe the parent demographic that I'm talking to. That'd be cool for me to know. But I think of the college application process as something that kind of starts, as soon as they enter high school, because it's something that should be in the back of our mind. If our student is thinking about going to college. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of seniors. Okay, but good. We have some ninth graders, some 10th graders. I think that's great that you guys are already thinking about the college application process, because while the senior year is when you do it, there's so much preparation that goes into it starting from freshman year. But I just want to make sure that I'm answering any questions or addressing anything. So the first step is kind of what I think of as this could start at any time up until applications open. So this is where your student or you are thinking about colleges that are going to be interesting to your student or to the child. Whether that's considering location, majors, cost, religion, if that's something that interests you. And size, I think, is a really big factor that sometimes isn't considered. So, if you have a student who knows what they want to study, that's going to help you narrow down your options, because you could start by, looking for schools that offer that major. If your student doesn't know what they want to study, there could be other things that are really important to them. Do they do well in a smaller environment? Do they want to live in the middle of a city? Do they like Sacramento? Do they like, do you live in Rio Linda, North Highlands? Do they want to experience a larger metropolitan area, or do they like something more, urban, kind of like outskirts of Sacramento? I think that those are factors that are really important to consider. And then while it shouldn't be, hopefully, the prohibiting factor, cost is definitely something to consider. And so when I start talking about the California applications, that's going to be where you'll probably see your most cost-effective options. And I know one of our other series is going to be all about the cost of college and paying for college. So I would love for you guys to join in on that one as well, so you can learn more about that. After that, the rest of these really focus a lot on senior year. So number 2, I think you could start the summer after junior year. That's going to be drafting and editing essays and personal statements. This is something where you should not just do a first draft. These should be revised. And even from that, something that my mom taught me is once you write it, leave it alone for at least 24 hours and then go back to it. Because sometimes you'll catch things that you didn't catch the first time. So for the draft and edit essays, I really recommend that students start thinking about that at the end of 11th grade and through that summer, so that they have plenty of time to revise, edit, and make any changes, and they're not feeling stressed out about that when they also have to worry about their school classes. From there, our applications open. So that's going to be typically starting in August. We start to see some applications open. Mainly our UCs and CSUs open at the beginning of school. And then in November through January, that's when you'll start seeing deadlines. And I'll talk a little bit more about the UC and CSU deadlines, but it's really important that students pay attention to when applications are due so that they don't miss any deadlines where they wanted to submit an application. Kind of overlapping with that November through January, we have submitting your FAFSA. This is super, super important for your students to submit so that they find out if they get any financial aid. This could be federal aid, state aid, or some colleges will also use the FAFSA to determine their own like scholarships that students could qualify. So really important that you're supporting your student in completing that application. After that, the community college timeline sort of begins. So that's in February is mainly when our local community college district opens up their application. And so if you're planning to go outside of the local area, then that's when you would have to research and see when theirs open. But there, I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but that's typically February through March. Then March through May, students will start to get decisions. They can wait until they have all their decisions and then decline them, or some students kind of get one and then they know that that's the one they're most excited about. But you'll also be receiving financial aid awards in that time. And so that's a good thing where they can fully consider the actual cost of each of their college options. May 1st is National College Decision Day. So that's typically when a lot of our colleges set their deadline for them to say yes or no by. And then in June or July, students need to remember to send their final transcripts to the college that they're planning to attend. And this is super, super important. And your high school counselors should be sending out reminders like, hey, send your final transcript. But this is super crucial so that the colleges know that they completed everything. And they can, if they don't receive the final transcript, they can rescind offers. Or your student could not get scheduled into classes that they need. Any questions so far about the general kind of timeline? I know this was very senior year heavy, but prior to senior year, it's really just focusing on extracurriculars, doing strong or earning strong grades in your classes, and starting to research colleges and majors. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about finding the best fit. I know I mentioned it with step 1, but I wanted to go a little more into detail. Ooh, good question. I saw in the chat how many schools can be listed on the FAFSA. You can list, I believe they extended it to, I want to say they extended it to 20 this year, but it used to be 10. However, you can always edit them. So if you don't list them initially, you can add additional schools, or if you change your mind, you can swap them out after the FAFSA has been processed. Really good question. So students should list any schools that they're planning to submit the application to so that their financial aid offer will be processed. Good question. So we have a new platform that we sent out information onto families. Hopefully you saw it. It's called California Colleges, and this is the new California like statewide college and career platform. All students have accounts. They just need to log in with their Twin Rivers email. And parents can also create an account and have it associated with their student. And one of the really big features that we're focusing on is the college search tool. So in the presentation, I've linked a video on how to use the college search tool, and then a link to the website. They can filter it by many of the previous kind of factors that I talked about earlier. So they can they can sort it by size, religion, sorts of extracurriculars, anything that they want, and they can help narrow that down and start liking colleges so that they can go back and research them. Sorry, let me answer something quick. Then the CSU and UC have some specific websites that are helpful for them as well. So the CSU has what they call the campus match tool. and degree search tool. So if your student knows what they want to study, they can use that to search which Cal States have a program, because you don't want to apply to a college that doesn't even have your major. And then the campus match tool is going to be similar, but just CSU specific. So it's going to let you filter by different features of the CSU. And then I've also included the CSU impacted major matrix, which I'm going to show you guys because I think it is really important. So this PDF shows which majors at each of the colleges are impacted. And impacted means that they have more students who are applying for that major than they can accept. So let's say we're talking about business, because I think business is a really popular one. An example of impacted would be that a college has, let's say, 100 spots for business majors, but they're going to get 800 to 900 applicants who are wanting to go to that major. So this tells you at which campuses that major is impacted. So you can see in the key that all programs are impacted at that campus, or there's some specific notes, and then the circle is not impacted. So you can see here, Fullerton, Long Beach, San Diego, San Jose, and San Luis Obispo, every single major is impacted. But let's say your student wants to study history. You could see here that most of these other CSUs offer history as a major. So your student could apply to any of these colleges, but the ones with the circle are not impacted. So that means that they would expect to accept, on par with, students who qualify. And I think this is really important to consider when students are applying, so that they know that, the acceptance rates for impacted majors tend to be lower. So it's definitely more of a competitive school. Let's see. Okay. At the UC, they don't have an impacted major, but they do have a really cool search feature where you can learn more about the campuses. So I linked this page. You can learn about campus acceptance rates, and this can help your students determine kind of what it looks like as a freshman class. So at Berkeley, you can see that their acceptance rate is 11.4%. And you can see that the average student has a 4.15 to 4.29. Yes, we are recording this video and it will be sent out. So if your student has, a 3.8, you can see that they don't fall within that range, which doesn't mean that they won't get in. However, it means that some of their other factors will have to be really, really strong. And I'm going to talk about that later in my presentation. Apart from learning about admissions data, you can also find your major. So similar with the CSU, you want to make sure you're applying to colleges that offer kind of what you want to study. So you would, here we go. Let's say your student wants to study biology. They're a freshman. You can see UC Davis has animal biology. Santa Barbara has aquatic biology, and it'll go through all the options. You can see Davis calls theirs cell biology. So again, this would be really important just to make sure that students are applying to colleges that offer what they're interested in studying. And this will be that first step that I think any student could start at the 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade level. Start researching colleges. And if you guys have the ability to take them on some college trips during the summer or on the weekend, super great, so that they can get a feel for the campus. Okay. So this is the first California specific application that I'm going to talk about. And for California, I'm going to talk about CSUs, UCs, and then community college. So for CSU admissions, they have a couple requirements. You have to complete A through G coursework, which is a set of 15 classes that students need to do. And they need to complete that with a C or better. I like to tell students C is for college. Colleges want to see C's or better. Ideally, the higher the better, but at minimum, a C. And then the GPA requirements for CSUs is a 2.5 minimum. However, they will consider 2.0 to 2.49 with supplemental factors. So for example, Sac State will admit the majority of our students who meet the minimum A through G requirement even if their GPA happens to be slightly below that 2.5 minimum. And then there are no standardized test scores or essays required for CSU application. It is strictly based on their coursework. For the application, it's one application that they can send to any and or all of the 22 campuses. Most of our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch will get 4 applications for free, which is great. So it's important that they, research the campuses so they know which ones they want to apply to. To launch the application, they will start on californiacolleges.edu. It will link them to CSU Apply, and then they'll be able to import their courses. If they launch from californiacolleges.edu, they'll be able to import their high school courses and grades directly into the application, which saves our students at least 30 to 45 minutes on the application. I linked some CSU resources for all of you. One of them is the in-state brochure. So that's just kind of promotional information about the CSUs. The admission handbook has tons of good details on actually applying and what admissions looks like. I linked the application deadlines. So most of them closed December 1st. However, a good number of them extended them and are accepting applications into January, February, and some of them even March. And then the other thing I linked is an English and a Spanish version of the A through G flyer. These are those courses that I was talking about that students need to complete and they need to get a C or better. So I wanted to put that out there so you guys could take a look at that. Any questions about the CSU application? This is by far the easiest one for our students. Okay, cool. Let's talk about UCs. So UCs are going to be our slightly more competitive California colleges. So we're lucky in California that we have the 2 largest state school systems in the country. The CSU, which we just talked about, has 22 campuses, and the UC has 9 campuses. The UC requirements, same thing, you must complete the A through G coursework. However, they also add in that I think 10 of the 15 courses must be completed prior to senior year. So that is important for the UCs. The minimum GPA is a 3.0 for UCs, and that's calculated by using all of the A through G courses completed in grades 10 through 11. That's their A through G UC GPA. And there are also no standardized test scores required for the UCs, so they do not need to take the ACT or the SAT. However, if they take the SAT and they do well, that can be used for placement into their English and math courses their freshman year. Similar to the CSU application, the UCs have one application that you can submit to any of the 9 campuses. Similarly, students will launch through californiacolleges.edu, And they will also be able to import their courses and grades from California colleges if they use it to launch. That's why we're encouraging all of our students to do that. The UC application is different from the CSU application in that there are personal insight questions. So it's not just one essay that they submit, they actually answer 4 different questions. Is this a link? There we go. And they get to choose. So there are 8 questions to choose from, and your student will choose 4 to answer. And then they get 350 words per question to answer it. And so something I tell students is we spend a lot of time in English classes learning how to write an intro, how to use transition words, how to be descriptive. This is not the time for flowery writing unless that's the purpose of your personal insight. So instead, this is their opportunity to show that they can write succinctly. So using, the minimum number of words they need to get their point across, because every sentence they write should be adding something to their response to the prompt, because you only have 350 words. And I have some sample PIQs from students who have been accepted to UCs, so I'll add in a link to those in this presentation because I think it's really good to read strong examples of what that looks like. So some examples of questions are: describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. And I really like this webpage because it gives some additional things and some questions that students can sort of answer. So things to consider: a leadership role can mean more than just a title. It can mean being a mentor to others, acting as the person in charge of a specific task, or taking the lead role in organizing an event or project. Think about what you accomplished and what you learned from the experience. What were your responsibilities? So I like that there's these questions that guide the students in writing their response. So that is an overview of the UC application. And similarly, I've linked some resources. I'll go back to comprehensive review in a second. So here you'll find a really good kind of newsletter on UC admissions. You'll find a quick reference guide, which is kind of tips and tricks to applying, the UC A through G requirements, and then a link to their timeline, because their timeline is a little different. What I did want to talk about was the UC comprehensive review. So the CSUs just look at your grades, whereas the UCs are considering multiple factors, and they put together this thing called comprehensive review, which lists the 13 different factors that colleges are looking at in terms of admissions. And almost every college, except for Merced and Riverside, do a holistic review. So that means they consider all 13 and they're not equally weighted. So they're looking at the student, the bigger picture of the student. So there's 13, and I just wanted to go through them. So number 1 is your GPA. Number 2 is, did the student take any A through G courses above the minimum? Number 3 is how many honors and AP courses they took and how they performed. Number 4 is if the student is in the top 9% of their high school class. Number 5, the quality of senior year classes. And this is something that I really stress to juniors when they're doing their course requests, is that they should choose a rigorous senior year, because if they're looking to go to UCs, because UCs are looking at whether they continued a rigorous course load into their 4th year of high school. 6 is academic performance relative to opportunities. So I think about this kind of like, what are the offers that the school has? What AP, dual enrollment, that sort of thing, what do they offer? and what did the student take. So if they offer 4 AP classes and the student took all 4, that's going to be, right, outstanding performance relative to opportunities. If they offer 4 AP and the student didn't take any, then they're going to fall lower on the scale. Number 7, outstanding performance in one or more academic subjects. So this could be, maybe the student has always gotten straight A's in science, or has taken an extraordinary number of science classes and done well in them. If they kind of chose to, to specialize or had outstanding results in one subject. Number 8 is outstanding work in one or more special projects in any academic field of study. So maybe if you go to Grant and your student is in the Health Sports Academy, if they did something above and beyond in that specific subject, that will be a factor. Number 9 is recent marked improvement in academic performance. So maybe sophomore year, they got all C's, but junior year, they got all A's. That would be factored in to show that the student improved and grew. Number 10 is special talents, achievements, or awards in a particular field. So they will have a chance to write about their extracurriculars, and that will be factored into their admissions decision. Number 12 is academic accomplishments in light of a student's life experiences and special circumstances. So this is a chance where, let's say your student has a GPA that's on the lower end of average for that college, but there are reasons for that. Maybe they're a foster youth. Maybe one of their parents has been sick. Maybe they have 4 younger siblings that they help watch and take care of after school. They should highlight those in their personal insight questions to explain and give context to show how well they're doing, considering that they work full time and they watch their siblings, right? That can be factored in to their admissions decision. And then the last one is location of a student's secondary school and residence. So this might be if they live in a really rural, isolated area, not a lot of access to extracurriculars or things like that, then that can be factored into their decision as well. So again, even though the UCs have much more rigorous expectations, they also do a more holistic review outside of just academics. So I think that's something interesting for students. Okay, let's talk about California community colleges. I think that the California community college route is a really, really, really valuable one for a lot of our students from Twin Rivers. And I'll name a couple reasons. 1, cost. Most of our students can go to California Community College for free for 2 years and get all the classes they need done, and then be able to graduate from a 4-year university within 2 years. It is done, it is doable, and it can save, if you choose to go to community college for your first 2 years instead of straight to a UC, you're probably saving $80,000, which is not insignificant. There are no GPA requirements, there's no standardized test scores, and there's no essays required. The application, pretty straightforward. They submit it online. There's no specific deadline. In theory, you could apply 2 days before classes start. As long as you get that ID number, you could register for classes in August and be fine. And then this is the main reason that community college is basically free. It's the California Promise. So that promises no enrollment fees to students who are eligible based on income. It does not cover the cost of books or other expenses. And in order to qualify for this, you do need to complete the FAFSA. So that's another reason we are very, very adamant that students do the financial aid application. And Los Rios, which is our local community college district, has the Los Rios Promise. So if your students make, or if your family income is too high, then your student can probably still qualify for the Los Rios Promise, which will also waive tuition. So students end up paying, I think, $22 per semester as long as they're taking 12 units. And then whatever they have to pay for books, which is a really, really good deal. The Common App. This is another application system that is used by more than 1,000 colleges. This is going to be most of the private colleges in California, not most of, but a lot of the private colleges in California. Ivy Leagues and out-of-state schools will frequently use the Common App. Students will need their transcript, a list of activities, work, responsibilities. A lot of colleges who use the Common App are going to require test scores, so they're going to need a copy of that. They're going to need parent guardian information, and then a list of their academic honors and achievements. For the non-senior parents out there, something that I usually recommend to my students is to start a running document where they keep track of things that they do. So they could start it in their high school Google Doc, and just title it College Application Activities. And then they can list any clubs they participate in, if they do volunteer work, if they participate in things outside of school. And once they start keeping track of that, maybe they update it once a month, maybe they update it once a year, but then come senior year, when they're doing their college applications, they don't have to sit there and think, freshman year, I did something. What was it? And then it's 3 years ago. They don't remember. But if they've kept track all along, then it's super easy to go back and say, okay, look, freshman year I was in the Hmong Club. And I helped plan the Hmong New Year. And that was something I took a leadership role in. So that's something that I think is really, really beneficial for students. The Common App frequently requires counselor or teacher recommendations. And so that's where it's important that they find a few teachers throughout high school that they feel comfortable with, who really get to know them, who might be potential recommenders for their college applications. And then the other thing about the Common App is that every college can have a different deadline. So really important to kind of put those in your phone, make a calendar, set a reminder so that you're not missing those, because there's no hard deadline that covers all of the colleges. It's going to be college by college. Here are some good Common App resources. So the first one, they actually have a website where they have family resources. So when I looked at it, it was comprehensive. It had tips and tricks. It had checklists. It had a wide variety of options for families to learn more about using the Common App. Down here, I have explore more than 1,000 colleges on Common App. So you can find which colleges exist there. And again, you can sort by different things. So maybe you're looking for an HBCU, a historically black college or university. You can choose that. Hispanic serving institution, you can choose that. You can choose size, and then you can read about the colleges on that website. And then the other thing I linked that Common App has is a college prep checklist. So these are some good recommendations for middle school, kind of what you should do, things to keep in mind. I saw some 8th grade parents in here. That would be a great thing for you guys to check out. 9th grade, what should they do in the 9th grade? 10th grade, what should they be focusing on in 10th grade? 11th grade, 12th grade, and these are pretty good checklists. So I definitely think that's a really good resource to use. And you can also find something similar in California colleges. Okay, I've just got a little bit more. This is kind of my last thing that I hope you take away from, as you leave the presentation, think about what you can do to support your student. Encourage them to meet with their school counselor or career tech if they have one to talk about post-secondary plans, whether that's college or career or military. Create a calendar of deadlines. This is going to be more for our juniors and seniors, specifically maybe seniors. When are things due? Even better, maybe they block out when they want to be done with certain things if they're writing personal essays or personal insight questions. Help your child prepare for college admissions tests. If they're going to take the SAT or the ACT, spending some time reviewing. Khan Academy, fantastic resources for the SAT. You can also find free resources on the College Board website for the SAT and free resources on the ACT website for ACT. So they can do practice questions every day, every week, whatever, to help them prepare. Offer to look over your senior's college application. Sometimes they get excited, they want to do it and just hit submit, but there might be mistakes or things that you'll remember that they could have included. And so just asking them, hey, do you want me to look at your application with you? Maybe I can offer you some advice or remind you of something you did that you forgot to put on there. Complete the CSS/financial aid process profile if required. This is going to be more for our private and out-of-state colleges, but just being there to support when they need you to fill out this financial information. And then the last one, and this is really, really important, is to complete the FAFSA. Whether it's you completing it yourself or giving them the information that they need to complete it, but they can't get financial aid without putting in their parent information. Excuse me. So that's what I hope you kind of think of as a parent and supporting the student, your student. And I didn't put it on here, but you can also support them with their college search, help them figure out what they are interested in. And then the last slide on here is just each high school's counselor's information. So each high school has a different format that they offer their support in. Some of them do workshops every week. Like I know Rio Linda does a college workshop once a week on Wednesdays. I know Grant runs workshops during sixth period on Wednesdays. But I wanted to link each high school's counselor slash counseling website so that you can make sure you know who your student's counselor is and see if there's any pertinent college information on the website. So I included the charters, all 4 of the comprehensive high schools, and then our alternative schools and KEMA as our independent study program. But yeah, that is my presentation. I still have some time if anybody wants to ask some questions or has another topic that they want me to chat about real quick before we end the presentation. Thanks for coming, you guys.